The Argus dropped out of hyperspace with a shudder that rattled Commander Selena Vega's teeth. She'd been through worse planetary approaches, much worse, but something about Arcanus 9 set her nerves on edge. Maybe it was the way the system's 3 Deathworlds hung in the viewscreen like poisoned jewels, each radiating its own unique brand of hostility. Or maybe it was simply the mission parameters: quick reconnaissance, minimal footprint, gather intelligence on the system's potential for human habitation. Vega knew better. Nothing about Arcanus 9 would ever welcome human life. Scans coming through, Commander. Lieutenant Park reported, his fingers dancing across the holographic display. Atmospheric readings for Arcanus 9b match intelligence reports. Nitrogen-oxygen mix with trace toxins, but breathable with standard filters. Vega nodded, studying the planet's surface. From orbit it resembled a vicious work of art, one hemisphere dominated by volcanic fields, with rivers of molten rock, another covered in bioluminescent swamps that shifted colors like a neon fever dream, and between them vast stretches of ochre desert, where psychic storms whipped sand into hallucinatory patterns. Life signs, she asked, though she already knew the answer. Abundant, Park confirmed grimly. And big. The Arthax colonies are concentrated in the volcanic zones. Dravari signatures in the marshlands. Orloth herds moving through the deserts. First Officer Daniels glanced up from her console. Command's briefing said these species don't interact. They've evolved in parallel on the separate Deathworlds of this system, only meeting in limited trade or territorial conflicts. That's the official intel, Vega agreed, strapping her pulse rifle to her back. Its familiar weight was reassuring against her spine. But something's changing out here on the frontier. Assembly Signals intelligence picked up unusual communications between species. That's why we're here, find out what's happening before we commit to establishing an outpost. Vega's squad consisted of 6 experienced survey specialists, all former military like herself. They'd survived mapping runs on Titan's methane seas, the glass forests of Rigel 7, and the sentient cyclones of Barnard's Star. But as Vega studied their faces during the pre-mission briefing, she sensed the same unease she felt. The Arthax, she continued activating a holodisplay that showed the insectoid species. Their chitinous exoskeletons gleamed metallic blue in the footage, and their 4 arms each ended in serrated knife-like appendages. Hive-based society bred for hunt and kill efficiency. Their queens select for the most lethal traits each generation. Earth xenobiology classifies them as apex predators. The display shifted to amphibious creatures with translucent skin, revealing complex internal organs. The Dravari evolved in oceanic trenches with crushing pressure and toxic water. They've engineered their bodies to produce almost any biochemical weapon imaginable. Also apex predators on their native world. Finally, the display showed massive dinosaur-like beings with cranial crests that pulsed with bioluminescence. And the Orloth, 10 meters tall at maturity, telepathic hunters that evolved to share battlefield awareness across their packs. They've dominated their home planet for 50 million years. And we're going down there. Why exactly? Asked Specialist Reeves, the team's xenobiologist. Because humanity needs to understand what we're up against, Vega replied, her voice hardening. Each of these species believes they're the most dangerous force in the galaxy. Each evolved on planets that make Earth look like a resort paradise. And now, for the first time, intelligence suggests they might be communicating with purpose. Vega turned to face her team directly. Earth is a rising power in this sector. 50 years since first contact, and we've established outposts on 17 worlds. Some species see us as a curiosity, others as competition. She paused. We need to know if these Deathworlders see us as prey. 2 hours later, the Argus shuttle touched down on a plateau overlooking the transitional zone between volcanic fields and marshland. Perfect for their initial survey, a defensible position with visibility across multiple biomes. As the engines powered down, the true alienness of Arcanus 9b asserted itself. The air tasted metallic even through filters. The gravity pulled at their limbs with an extra 10% beyond Earth normal. And the sounds clicking, chirping, humming suggested life everywhere watching. Vega deployed sensors in a perimeter around their landing site. "Comms, check every 15 minutes, she ordered. "First survey team with me, Reeves Sandoval, we're moving south toward the thermal vents. Second team under Daniels heads east into the marshland perimeter. Don't engage with large fauna unless absolutely necessary." As Vega's team moved toward the volcanic region, the ground beneath their boots changed from dusty clay to black volcanic glass. Heat shimmers made the horizon waver like a mirage. Ahead, vents in the Earth's crust exhaled sulfurous plumes. Perfect terrain for Arthax. Reeves noted her scanner sweeping the landscape. Their exoskeletons absorb thermal energy. This environment supercharges them. Vega paused, raising a closed fist. Her team froze. "Movement 2 o'clock, she whispered into her comm. "Thermal signature behind that obsidian outcropping." Before anyone could respond, the scanner in Reeves' hand emitted a high-pitched whine. "Interference," the xenobiologist muttered, smacking the device against her palm. "Something's jamming us." Vega felt the hairs on her neck stand up. Tactical instinct honed across a dozen battlefields screamed danger. "Fall back," she ordered. "Now." They'd taken 3 steps when the first Arthax exploded from the ground beneath them. It shot upward like a bullet, mandibles spread wide, the 4 arms unfolding from its thorax in a blur of motion. Sandoval screamed as serrated claws raked across his leg armor, slicing through the composite material like paper. Vega's rifle was in her hands before she registered drawing it. 3 pulse rounds caught the Arthax mid-thorax, sending it tumbling backward. But where there was one. "Ambush!" she shouted into her comm, switching to team-wide broadcast. "All units, we are under attack." More Arthax erupted from hidden tunnels. 5, 10, 20, a coordinated hunting pack moving with eerie precision. Vega's combat senses shifted into the crystalline clarity of battle. Time seemed to slow as she fired, rolled, fired again. Her bullets found targets, but the insectoids moved with unnatural speed, their chittering communication forming patterns she'd never encountered in simulation. "They're hurting us!" Reeves shouted, firing her sidearm at an Arthax leaping from an overhead ridge. Vega realized with horror that the xenobiologist was right. Each Arthax attack pushed them back along a specific vector, away from their landing zone toward the marshlands. "Daniels," she barked into her comm. "Report." Static answered her. "Second team report." Nothing. Sandoval limped beside her, his leg weeping blood through the emergency sealant. "They knew we were coming," he gasped. "This is a coordinated—" A new sound cut through the chaos, a wet, gurgling roar that didn't belong to any Arthax. From the marsh edge ahead, massive shapes emerged. The Dravari. Their amphibious bodies glistened in the harsh sunlight, toxin sacs pulsing beneath translucent skin. Where the Arthax moved like lightning, the Dravari flowed like toxic mercury, their movements almost hypnotic in their fluid grace. "Impossible," Reeves whispered. "They're natural enemies, they don't hunt together." Yet here they were, Arthax and Dravari coordinating with precision that spoke of planning, intelligence, purpose. Before Vega could process this impossibility, the ground trembled. From the desert beyond the marshes, dust clouds announced new arrivals. Massive, thundering footsteps shook the earth as the first Orloth crested a dune. Its telepathic crest pulsed with psychic energy that Vega could feel pressing against her mind, even at this distance. 3 apex predator species, acting in concert, impossible. "Run!" Vega commanded, grabbing Sandoval's arm. "Back to the shuttle." But as they turned, a wall of Arthax blocked their retreat. Caught between 3 armies of evolution's most perfect killing machines, Vega made the only choice available. "New heading," she barked. "Northwest Ridge. There's a cave system on the geological survey. Move." As they fled, pursued by the coordinated hunting packs, Vega activated her emergency beacon. "Earth Outpost Theta 9. This is Commander Vega. Reconnaissance team under attack. Requesting immediate extraction. The response, when it finally came through, bursts of static, froze her blood. Argus. Team, this is Theta 9. Nearest combat-ready vessel is 72 hours out. Hold position and... The transmission dissolved into white noise as they entered the cave system. Vega looked at her wounded teammate and their dwindling ammunition readouts. 72 hours. 3 days to survive against 3 species of apex predators working together for the first time in galactic history. And somewhere in that chaos, the rest of her team was missing. Deeper in the cave system, Vega took inventory of their desperate situation. Sandoval needed medical attention beyond what their field kits could provide. Reeves was physically unharmed, but shaken by the unprecedented cooperation they'd witnessed. And their communications with the Argus in orbit were sporadic at best, something in the planet's magnetic field. Or perhaps the Orloth's psychic emissions created unpredictable dead zones. "We've got 3 days," Vega told them, keeping her voice steady, as she applied a second layer of sealant to Sandoval's wound. 3 days to figure out what's happening, find our missing team members, and signal for extraction. And survive 3 separate species of apex predators hunting us in coordinated packs, Reeves added grimly. "Don't forget that part." Vega ignored the sarcasm. "First priority, secure this position, establish comms with Daniel's team, if they're still alive, and understand why these species are working together." Through the narrow cave entrance, the red glow of distant volcanic vents provided their only illumination. The constant low rumble of the planet's tectonic activity seemed to match Vega's pounding heartbeat. Arcanus 9b was alive in a way that went beyond biology. The entire world felt like a predator. After setting up motion sensors at the cave, Mouth Vega tried again to reach the second team. "Daniels Park, do you copy? Any survey team members respond?" Static hissed through her comm, then fragmented words. "Near the signal disrupted, they're hunting us." "Daniels!" Vega shouted. "Coordinates!" "Marshland Central structure, like a Dravari everywhere." The transmission cut off abruptly. Vega turned to Reeves. "Analysis." The xenobiologist was already reviewing data on her pad. "Marshland Central likely means the large bioluminescent basin, 10 kilometers east. Geological surveys showed unusual formations there that might be artificial structures." "That's where they've taken our people," Vega decided. "Or where they've been driven." Sandoval winced as he shifted position. "Commander, I can't move far on this leg. And you can't carry me through 3 hostile biomes." The unspoken truth hung in the air. Leaving him meant probable death, but taking him guaranteed none of them would survive. "I'm not leaving anyone behind," Vega stated flatly. She'd made that promise to herself during the colony wars, standing in the ruins of New Santiago. Never again. Reeves was about to respond when one of the motion sensors beeped. Something was approaching the cave, something small, moving erratically. Vega raised her rifle, sighting down the tunnel toward the entrance. The shape that appeared was Arthax, but unlike any they'd seen. Smaller, with an exoskeleton that hadn't fully hardened to metallic blue. A juvenile. And more strikingly, one of its mandibles was broken, and it moved with a limping gait that suggested injury. "Don't shoot," Reeves whispered. "It's just a hatchling." Vega kept her rifle trained on the young Arthax. "On a death world, even the infants are lethal." The creature stopped at the cave entrance mandibles, clicking in what seemed almost like hesitation. Then, to their shock, it made a series of gestures with its upper limbs. "Is it signaling us?" Sandoval asked, disbelief evident in his voice. Reeves activated her translator implant, which contained basic lexicons for known sentient species. After a moment, she looked up in surprise. "It's using a trade pigeon, simplified universal assembly language." She listened again as the Arthax repeated its gestures. "It's saying, 'Hunters come, follow me or die.'" Vega didn't lower her weapon. "Why would it help us?" The young Arthax clicked its mandibles again. Through the translator, Reeves interpreted, "Not all prey, not all predator. Choose." A philosophical Arthax was the last thing Vega had expected to find on this mission. But survival meant seizing every advantage, no matter how unexpected. Tell it we'll follow, she decided. But if this is a trap, it dies first. The young Arthax led them through a network of tunnels that branched deeper than any geological survey had mapped. The passages grew warmer as they descended, suggesting proximity to the volcanic activity that dominated this region. Occasionally, they passed chambers where the rock walls had been carved with intricate patterns, historical records perhaps, or territorial markings. After an hour of careful progress, they emerged into a vast underground cavern. Steam vents created a perpetual mist that condensed on stalactites overhead, forming mineral-rich droplets that rained down into shallow pools. Bioluminescent fungi provided ambient light in blue-green hues. A sanctuary, Reeves breathed, scanning the environment. These conditions are perfect for Arthax molting. The young Arthax gestured toward a collection of woven fibrous material that resembled nests. Rest, it signaled. Safe here. Vega remained skeptical, but Sandoval needed to stop. She helped ease him onto one of the nest structures, surprised to find it remarkably comfortable. The fibers seemed to adjust to body weight and temperature. "What's your name?" Reeves asked their unlikely guide. The Arthax touched its broken mandible. "Thorn," the translator interpreted. "Outcast. Failed hunter." "Why help humans?" Vega asked directly, still keeping her sidearm within easy reach. Thorn's answer came in a complex series of clicks and gestures that seemed to challenge the translator. After several attempts, it managed, "Queen's wrong. 3-clan hunt breaks old law. Humans not prey, humans different power." "Different how?" Vega pressed. "Humans adapt. Deathworlders evolve strong, take many generations. Humans change fast. Make new things." Thorn's gestures became more animated. "Queens fear this. Fear humans will become better predators." The revelation struck Vega like a physical blow. These apex predator species, each the undisputed master of their evolutionary niche, had allied against humanity not because they saw humans as easy prey, but because they recognized a potential rival, a species that might one day outcompete them through adaptability rather than raw biological advantage. "They're hunting us because they're afraid of us," she realized aloud. Thorn's mandibles clicked in what might have been agreement. 3-clan ritual hunt. Prove dominance. Kill human leaders, take technology. Show humans correct place. "And you disagree with this plan?" Vega's tone remained skeptical. "Failed hunter sees differently. Watched humans on other worlds through knowledge crystals. Humans share strength. Make weak strong." Thorn gestured to its broken mandible. "In hive, broken dies. Among humans." Vega understood the unspoken question. "Among humans, we repair what's broken. We help each other survive." "Want this?" Thorn signaled simply. "Help humans. Humans help Thorn leave Arcanus. Find new place." It was a bargain born of necessity, an alliance between species with nothing in common except the desire to survive. Vega wasn't naive enough to trust completely, but she recognized genuine self-interest when she saw it. "Deal," she said. "Guide us to our people, help us survive until extraction, and I'll personally guarantee you asylum in Earth territory." As Sandoval rested, and Reeves collected biological samples from their surroundings, Vega studied the crude map Thorn sketched in the sandy floor of the cavern. The young Arthax had knowledge of all 3 biomes, the volcanic fields, the toxic marshes, and the psychic deserts. More importantly, it understood the hunting patterns of the 3 species. "Dravari, hold your people here." Thorn indicated a structure in the marshlands. "Testing place. Study weakness." "Vivisection," Reeves translated grimly. "They're known for it." "Arthax hunt packs guard tunnels leading to marsh edge," Thorn continued. "Orloth watch from mine towers and desert beyond." Vega studied the crude map military training kicking into overdrive. "So we need to pass through Arthax territory, cross Dravari marshlands, and potentially deal with Orloth psychic surveillance." She nodded to herself. "A 3-phase operation. Not simple," Thorne's gestures seemed to emphasize. Hunt Queens activated warrior forms. Toxin Lords prepared special venoms for human biology. Mind Crushers focus psychic power through Spire Crystal. They've been planning this, Vega realized. How long have the three clans been coordinating? Half cycle, Thorne answered. Since first human ships appeared at System Edge. Vega felt ice form in her stomach. Earth Command had been considering Arcanus 9 for colonization for less than 3 months. If these Deathworlder species had intelligence about human movements, that far back, it suggested infiltration of Earth communications, or worse, human collaborators. We move in 2 hours, she decided. Sandoval, you stay here with emergency supplies. If we're not back in 24 hours, use this. She handed him a small device. It's a hyperspace transponder. One-time use, powerful enough to punch a signal directly to Earth Command. They'll triangulate your position for extraction. Sandoval nodded grimly. They both knew it was a last resort. The energy signature would bring every predator on the planet down on his position. Reeves, Thorne, with me. We're going to rescue our people and find out exactly who coordinated this ambush. As they prepared to depart the relative safety of Thorne's sanctuary, Vega couldn't shake the unsettling thought that they were stepping into a conflict that went far beyond one planetary system. If 3 apex predator species could overcome millennia of rivalry to unite against humanity, what did that suggest about humanity's place in the galactic order? And more immediately concerning, who had told these hunters exactly when and where to expect human scouts? The volcanic canyons of Arcanus 9b resembled an architect's nightmare. Obsidian spires thrust upward, like accusing fingers, while rivers of molten rock traced veins of angry red through the blackened landscape. Steam geysers erupted at random intervals, blasting sulfurous clouds that reduced visibility to meters at a time. Perfect hunting grounds for the Arthax. Stay low, Thorne signaled as they crept along a ridge overlooking a major lava flow. Hunter scouts watch high points. Vega followed the young Arthax's lead, noting how it used the thermal updrafts to mask their scent and movement. Despite its failure as a hunter, Thorne displayed remarkable knowledge of stealth techniques. They had already avoided 2 Arthax patrols by anticipating their routes through the volcanic terrain. How much farther to the marsh boundary? Vega whispered. 3 distance marks, Thorne gestured. The translator interpreted this as roughly 5 kilometers. Reeves paused to collect samples from a crystalline formation that grew along the canyon wall. These silicon structures, she murmured, they're saturated with trace elements from the volcanic activity, almost like natural fiber optics. Is this relevant to our survival? Vega asked tersely. It might be, Reeves replied, her scientific curiosity undampened by their dire circumstances. The Arthax use crystalline technology for communication. If these formations are naturally occurring throughout their territory, they could be monitoring our movements through them. Vega finished immediately grasping the tactical implications. Thorne, is this true? The young Arthax's mandibles clicked rapidly. Yes, crystal songs carry hunter speak far. Queen hears all through earth veins. Vega reassessed their situation. If the Arthax could track them through natural geological formations, stealth might be impossible. We need a distraction, she decided. From her pack, she removed a compact seismic charge standard equipment for geological surveys, not designed as a weapon, but capable of creating localized tremors. Will this disrupt the crystal communications? Thorne examined the device with multiple limbs, turning it over carefully. Yes, break crystal song, make hunting noise, but also call other hunters. That's the idea, Vega explained. We set this to detonate 2 kilometers south. When the Arthax investigate, we slip through to the marshlands. And if Dravari are waiting at the boundary, Reeves asked. Then we'll deal with one enemy at a time. Vega programmed the charge and secured it against a crystal-rich outcropping. Move out. We have 15 minutes before detonation. They made their way northward using steam vents for cover. Twice, they froze as Arthak's hunting parties chittered past mandibles, clicking in patterns that Thorn identified as battle signals. The alien hunters moved with disturbing precision, their multi-limbed bodies flowing over the difficult terrain like liquid metal. When the seismic charge detonated, the effect was more dramatic than Vega had anticipated. The entire canyon seemed to shudder. Crystalline formations shattered with high-pitched sounds, creating a cascading effect as the vibrations traveled through the interconnected structures. In the distance, Arthak's battle cries rose in a frenzy of clicks and whistles. "Now," Vega ordered, and they sprinted for the marsh boundary. They reached the transitional zone between biomes, just as the last natural light was fading from Arcanus 9B's crimson sky. Before them stretched the bioluminescent marshlands, a surreal landscape, where pools of iridescent liquid reflected the glow of alien flora. Massive lily pad structures large enough to support a human's weight dotted the surface of the deeper pools. The air here was thick with humidity and strange sweet scents that the filters in Vega's breathing apparatus couldn't completely neutralize. Dravari territory. Reeves confirmed her scanner, picking up chemical signatures in the air. Toxin concentrations rising. Filters at maximum. Thorn seemed uncomfortable in this new environment, its exoskeleton flexing as if in response to the higher humidity. "Toxin lords rule waterlands," it signaled. "Move quiet. Touch nothing." They had advanced less than a kilometer into the marshes when Vega noticed movement in her peripheral vision, a ripple beneath the surface of a nearby pool that seemed to flow against the natural current. She raised a closed fist, and the group halted. Slowly, a shape emerged from the iridescent water. Unlike the Arthaks with their chitinous exoskeletons, or the Orloth with their massive reptilian bulk, the Dravari possessed an unsettling beauty. Its translucent skin revealed complex internal organs that pulsed with bioluminescence, creating patterns that shifted like liquid art. 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern regarded them with alien intelligence, while gill-like structures at its neck fluttered with each breath. More disturbing were the sacs visible beneath its skin bladders, filled with swirling colored liquids that Vega knew contained toxins capable of dissolving human tissue in seconds. The Dravari made no aggressive move. Instead, it extended a 3-fingered hand palm up in what seemed like a peaceful gesture. "Universal assembly sign for parley," Reeves whispered, recognizing the motion. Before Vega could respond, a human voice called out from behind a cluster of phosphorescent plants. "Commander Vega, hold your fire!" A figure emerged, human male, dressed in the tattered remains of what had once been an independent prospector's environmental suit. His face was gaunt with a week's growth of beard and eyes that darted nervously between the humans and the Dravari. "Rax." Vega identified him, her voice cooling. "Thought you were operating in the Proxima sector." "Circumstances change," the mercenary replied with a forced smile, "especially when profit margins shift." Understanding dawned with sickening clarity. "You sold us out," Vega stated flatly. "You told the Deathworlders we were coming." Rax shrugged the gesture incongruously, casual in their life or death circumstances. "The Galactic Assembly pays well for human surveys, but the Deathworlder clans pay better for human specimens, especially military ones with neural implants and tactical data." The Dravari beside him made a series of liquid sounds that Vega's translator couldn't interpret. "Balun says your neural patterns would fetch the highest price," Rax translated. "Combat veterans have the most interesting responses to their toxins." Vega's hand inched toward her sidearm, but Rax noticed the movement. "I wouldn't," he warned. "The water around you is saturated with contact neurotoxins. One splash and your nervous system shuts down in 60 seconds. "What about our survey team?" Vega demanded. "Daniels and the others." "Alive," Rax answered. "For now. The Dravari preservation techniques are quite advanced. They can keep a subject conscious through procedures that would kill most species." Thorn, who had remained partially concealed behind Reeves, suddenly chittered in the Arthak's battle language. The sound caused the Dravari to flinch visibly, its toxin sacs pulsing with defensive coloration. In that moment of distraction, Vega acted. She fired a pulse round into the marsh water, directly in front of Rax and the Dravari. The energy discharge superheated the liquid, creating an explosive burst of steam and temporarily blinding both betrayer and alien. "Run!" she commanded, pushing Reeves ahead of her. They splashed through the shallows, leaping from one giant lily pad to the next, as Dravari alarm calls echoed behind them. The marsh erupted in activity ripples, indicating submerged movement converged from multiple directions. "They're surrounding us," Reeves gasped, as they reached a small island of relatively solid ground. Thorne's mandibles clicked rapidly. "Up!" the translator interpreted. "Climb plants!" The young Arthax was already scaling one of the massive reed-like structures that towered above the marsh. Despite its injured limb, it moved with surprising agility, using natural notches in the plant's surface. Vega signaled Reeves to follow, then turned to provide covering fire, as multiple Dravari surfaced around their position. Her pulse rifle whined as she discharged energy bolts into the water, near but not directly at the amphibious hunters. Her goal wasn't to kill, but to create confusion and cover their escape. The giant reed swayed alarmingly as Vega began her own ascent. Below, Rax was shouting commands to the Dravari hunters, his voice rising in frustration as they seemed reluctant to pursue up the flora. "They won't climb," Reeves observed from her perch several meters up. "Probably too heavy when they're fully hydrated." "Small mercies," Vega muttered, continuing her climb. When they reached a height of about 20 meters, Thorne signaled them to stop. The plant had widened into a platform-like structure, where its massive flower prepared to bloom. From this vantage point, they could see across large sections of the marsh, including a distant structure that rose from the water like an enormous nautilus shell, spiraling toward the sky. "Toxin Temple," Thorne identified it. "Where Dravari keep specimens." "Where they're holding my team," Vega said grimly. She turned to Reeves. "Options." The xenobiologist was examining something she'd collected during their escape, a small vial of the marsh water. "These bioluminescent organisms," she said. "They're responding to electrical impulses. Watch." She ran a small current from her scanner through the vial, and the liquid inside flared with increased brightness. "So," Vega pressed. "So the Dravari communicate through bioelectrical signals. That's why their skin is translucent, to allow those signals to be seen by others of their kind." Reeves' eyes gleamed with scientific excitement, despite their predicament. "If we could generate a powerful enough electromagnetic pulse, we could disrupt their communication," Vega finished. "But we don't have an EMP generator powerful enough to affect the entire marsh." "Crystal songs," Thorne interjected its translator, struggling with the concept. "Water plants connect like earth veins. Signal travels." Reeves nodded enthusiastically. "The reed system. It's all interconnected beneath the marsh like a massive neural network. If we introduce a signal at one point, it would propagate throughout the entire ecosystem," Vega concluded. She was beginning to see why Earth Command valued survey teams with scientific backgrounds in alien environments. Knowledge could be as powerful as weapons. But before they could develop this plan further, a new sound reached them, the unmistakable hum of anti-gravity technology. A small craft skimmed over the marshland surface, heading directly for the Toxin Temple. Its design was unlike any Earth or known alien vessel. "That's not Dravari," Reeves stated the obvious. "Their technology is biological, not mechanical." "And not Arthax or Orloth," Vega added, raising her tactical binoculars. Through the enhanced optics, she could make out a single pilot figure humanoid, but definitely not human. "Some other party is involved in this hunt." The craft docked at the Toxin Temple, and the mysterious pilot disappeared inside. Minutes later, alarm patterns rippled through the bioluminescent marsh, Dravari signals that even Vega could interpret as agitation. "Something's changed," she muttered. "Reeves, how quickly can you rig an electrical discharge through these reed systems?" "With what we have," The xenobiologist considered the question. Maybe 30 minutes. Do it. Thorn, I need intelligence. What else can you tell me about this toxin temple security layout? Anything? As Thorn described the Dravari structure and Reeves worked on their improvised disruptor, Vega formulated a rescue plan. The unexpected arrival of a new player complicated matters, but might also create an opportunity. If the Deathworlder alliance was facing internal political challenges, her thoughts were interrupted by Thorn's urgent chittering. Mind touch, the translator interpreted. Orloth searching. Vega felt it a moment later, a subtle pressure against her consciousness, like fingers delicately probing the edges of her thoughts. The Orloth's psychic abilities were no longer theoretical. They were being actively deployed. Mental shields, she ordered, activating the rudimentary B-side dampening technology built into their neural implants. Standard issue for Earth military operating in sectors with known telepathic species. But these were calibrated for species previously encountered. There was no guarantee they would work against Orloth telepathy. The pressure increased, becoming almost painful. Images flashed unbidden through Vega's mind. The volcanic canyons, the marsh's edge, the path they'd taken. The Orloth were extracting their route, tracing them to their current position. Hurry, she urged Reeves, who was connecting the final components of her improvised device. Almost. There. The xenobiologist attached a power cell salvaged from her scanner. Activating now. A pulse of energy discharged into the reed they occupied. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, like a wave, bioluminescence flared outward in all directions. The entire marsh lit up in patterns of blue and green that rippled outward from their position. The psychic pressure in Vega's mind abruptly ceased. Below, Dravari surfaced in confusion, their own bioluminescent patterns disrupted by the overwhelming signals coursing through the marsh's biological network. It worked, Reeves exclaimed. Their communication is scrambled. Not for long, Vega cautioned, already starting her descent. This is our window. We move for the Toxin Temple now. As they climbed down, Vega noted with satisfaction that the Dravari seemed disoriented, their movements uncoordinated. Whatever neural network they used to coordinate hunting patterns had been temporarily overwhelmed by Reeves' electromagnetic pulse through the reed system. They reached the marsh floor and began making their way toward the Toxin Temple, moving from one area of solid ground to the next. The disorientation among the Dravari wouldn't last long, and they still had to contend with the mysterious new arrival. Commander, Reeves said quietly, as they paused behind a cluster of phosphorescent fungi. I've been thinking about what Thorn told us about the three-clan alliance. Go on, Vega prompted, scanning for movement ahead. If they truly see humans as a threat because of our adaptability, then this isn't just about hunting us for sport or specimens. This is existential for them. They're trying to prevent what they see as a future competitor. Makes sense, Vega agreed. Apex predators don't share territory. But what if we could convince at least some of them that cooperation offers more benefits than competition? Reeves glanced at Thorn, who was scouting the path ahead. Thorn already sees value in human ways. There might be others. One renegade doesn't make an alliance, Vega countered. No, but it's a start. Especially if we can demonstrate that human adaptability can solve problems their evolutionary advantages can't. Before Vega could respond, Thorn returned with urgent news. Strangewalker entered temple, taking specimens, fighting toxin lords. Fighting, Vega repeated, surprised. The new arrival is attacking the Dravari. Yes, using weapons that burn water, toxin lords dying. A third party, targeting both humans and Deathworlders, complicated the picture considerably. But it also created chaos they could exploit. Change of plan, Vega decided. We use this conflict as cover to extract our people. Thorn is there a secondary entrance to the temple. Watergate beneath, for waste removal. Not the most appealing infiltration route, but beggars couldn't be choosers on a death world. Lead the way. As they approached the Toxin Temple, evidence of battle became clear. Sections of the spiraling structure were ablaze with an eerie blue fire that burned even on the water's surface. Dravari corpses floated in the surrounding marsh, their translucent bodies ruptured from within. The waste channel Thorn had identified was a narrow, partially submerged tunnel that fed into the temple's lower level. The smell was overpowering even through their breathing filters, but more concerning was the toxin concentration in the water. "Our suits won't protect us for long in this," Reeves warned, her scanner showing dangerous levels of biotoxins. Vega made a quick decision. Full submersion gear. She unpacked the compact rebreathers from their survival kits designed for short-duration underwater operations. 15 minutes of air at most. We find our people and get out. They entered the foul channel single-file Thorn, leading despite clear discomfort in the water. The tunnel opened into a partially flooded chamber, where the Dravari apparently processed biological waste from their experiments. The sounds of combat echoed from levels above energy weapons discharge and the liquid screams of dying Dravari. Vega consulted her scanner, switching to life sign detection mode. "I'm reading 5 human signatures 2 levels up. Vital signs weak, but stable." They found a spiraling ramp that connected the temple's levels and began their ascent, moving as quietly as possible, despite the ongoing battle. The Dravari were fully engaged with the mysterious attacker, leaving much of the structure's interior undefended. On the 3rd level, they discovered what they sought: a laboratory space with 5 transparent containment pods. Inside, each floated a member of Vega's survey team, suspended in a nutrient solution and connected to monitoring devices. They appeared unconscious, but alive. Daniels. Vega pressed her hand against the nearest pod where her first officer drifted in the viscous liquid. "How do we get them out?" Reeves examined the Dravari control interface, a biological console that resembled coral more than technology. "It's keyed to Dravari biochemistry. I'm not sure." A voice from the chamber entrance interrupted her. "You don't!" Rax stood in the doorway, a Dravari weapon leveled at them. "Step away from the specimens." "Specimens," Vega's voice hardened. "Those are my people." "And worth a fortune to the right buyers," Rax replied, "especially now that the Collective's agent has arrived." "The Collective?" Reeves questioned. "What is that?" "The next evolutionary step," Rax said, a disturbing fervor entering his voice. "A coalition of species that recognize humanity's expansion threatens the natural order. They've been watching Earth's colonization efforts with growing concern." The pieces clicked into place for Vega. "You're not just a mercenary, you're an ideological convert." "I've seen what's coming," Rax confirmed. "Humanity spreads like a virus, adapting and consuming. The Deathworlder clans recognize the threat first, but others are joining. The Collective offers a way to restore balance." While he spoke, Vega noticed Thorn had disappeared from view. The young Arthax had a talent for moving silently when needed. "And these other species sent a representative to ensure the hunt succeeds," Vega stated, playing for time. "The pilot we saw." "A vaccine adjudicator." Rax nodded. "They rarely intervene directly, but your survey team's capture warranted special attention." A chittering sound from above was Vega's only warning before Thorn dropped from a ventilation shaft onto Rax's shoulders. The young Arthax's mandibles snapped at the human trader's neck, not a killing blow, but enough to make him drop his weapon and howl in pain. Vega surged forward, driving her armored fist into Rax's solar plexus. The mercenary crumpled, gasping for breath. "The interface," she shouted to Reeves. "We need those pods open now." "Working on it." The xenobiologist had already pried open the biological console, exposing the pulsing tissues inside. "It's responding to electrical stimulation. If I can just—" The pods hissed open simultaneously, their viscous contents spilling onto the laboratory floor. Vega rushed to extract her team members, checking vital signs as she disconnected them from Dravari monitoring equipment. "They're alive," she confirmed with relief. "Sedated, but no permanent damage I can detect." We've got maybe 2 minutes before either the Dravari or this adjudicator realizes what's happening," Reeves warned, helping to support Daniel's unconscious form. Vega turned to Thorne, who was keeping watch at the chamber entrance. "We need an exit route, not the way we came in." "Flying shells," Thorne gestured. "Toxin lords have water skimmers, near top spiral." "Dravari vehicles. Can you operate one?" The young Arthax's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Can try." With racks secured with restraints from their kit, and the unconscious survey team members supported between them, they made their way upward through the Toxin Temple. The sounds of battle had diminished, suggesting either the adjudicator or the Dravari had gained the upper hand. They emerged onto an open platform near the temple's apex, where several organic-looking craft were docked. The water skimmers resembled manta rays, their flat bodies designed to hover just above the marsh surface. "Touch nerve center," Thorne instructed, indicating a pulsing node near what would be the pilot's position. "Think direction." Reeves placed her hand on the nerve center of the nearest skimmer, and the craft shuddered to life, rising slightly on anti-gravity fields. "It's responding to electrical impulses from my nervous system," she realized. "Similar to how the Reed network functions." They loaded their unconscious teammates aboard and prepared to depart. But as Vega secured racks to the craft's restraint system, a new presence made itself known. At the platform's edge stood a figure unlike any Vega had encountered. Vaguely humanoid, but with a chitinous exoskeleton, reminiscent of the Arthax amphibious adaptations, similar to the Dravari, and cranial structures that echoed the Orloth, a being that seemed to incorporate aspects of all three Deathworlder species. The adjudicator, Vega, guessed, raising her weapon. The hybrid being spoke in a voice that resonated on multiple frequencies simultaneously. "Your species calls itself Homo sapiens, the thinking man." Its multiple eyes focused on Vega with disturbing intensity. "Yet you do not think beyond your immediate survival." "We think plenty," Vega countered. "We think about cooperation instead of domination, about lifting others up instead of crushing them." "Noble sentiments from a species currently stripping resources from 17 worlds," the adjudicator replied. "The collective has studied your kind extensively. Your adaptability makes you dangerous, not because you evolve quickly, but because you refuse to accept natural limitations." "Is that why you orchestrated this hunt?" Vega demanded. "To eliminate the threat before it grows?" "To demonstrate reality," the adjudicator corrected. 3 apex species united against you. Soon there will be more. The Deathworlder clans are merely the first to recognize what you represent." Before Vega could respond, a massive tremor shook the Toxin Temple. From the direction of the desert, a tremendous roar echoed across the marsh, the unmistakable sound of an Orloth battle cry. "The third phase begins," the adjudicator stated. "The Mind Crushers come to finish what the Hunt Queens and Toxin Lords began." Vega made an instant decision. "Everyone on the skimmer now." As they boarded the Dravari craft, the adjudicator made no move to stop them. "Run, if you wish, Commander Vega. The psychic desert offers no sanctuary. The Orloth will find you wherever you hide." The skimmer pulled away from the platform with Reeves at the neural controls. Behind them, the Toxin Temple shuddered as something massive impacted its base. Through the fading light, Vega caught her first clear glimpse of an Orloth warrior, 10 meters of armored reptilian bulk, its cranial crest pulsing with psychic energy that she could feel, even at this distance. "Head for the cave system," she ordered. "Back to Sandoval." As they skimmed across the marsh surface, more Orloth appeared along the desert's edge. Their massive forms were silhouetted against the setting sun, telepathic crests, glowing with increasing intensity. "They're charging something," Reeves warned, her scanner beeping in alarm. "Psychic energy building to dangerous levels." The first blast hit like a physical wall. The skimmer lurched sideways as waves of psychic force washed over them. Vega felt pressure building inside her skull, threatening to burst through her mental shields. "Faster," she urged. Reeves pushed the craft to its limits, but the psychic attacks intensified. Behind them, The Toxin Temple collapsed as Orloth warriors tore through its structure, apparently unconcerned about Dravari casualties. The Alliance is breaking down, Vega observed. They're turning on each other. Expected, Thorn signaled. 3 clans never meant to share, only to hunt together. After hunt, old rivalries return. This confirmed what Vega had suspected. The Deathworlder alliance was one of convenience, not conviction. United only by a common perceived threat, they reverted to type when that threat seemed neutralized. They reached the volcanic territory as darkness fell completely over Arcanus 9b. The skimmer struggled with the increasing heat and rough terrain, finally giving out at the entrance to the cave system where they'd left Sandoval. On foot from here, Vega ordered helping to carry the still unconscious Daniels. Inside the cave, they found Sandoval awake and alert, his leg much improved after several hours of the cave's natural healing environment. "Commander," he exclaimed, relief evident. "I was about to activate the transponder." "Save it," Vega instructed. "We're going to need it, but not yet." She set Daniels down gently on one of the nest structures. "Status report on the extraction." Earth Outpost Theta 9 confirmed a combat vessel is en route, but it's still at least 40 hours out. Vega did the mental calculation. With the Orloth now fully engaged in the hunt, and the Arthax and Dravari potentially regrouping, they wouldn't survive that long. "We need to change the game," she decided. The adjudicator said something important, that the 3 Deathworlder clans united because they recognize the threat humans represent. But they're still bound by their evolutionary psychology. They can't help seeing each other as rivals. "So we exploit that," Reeves suggested, administering stimulants to the recovered survey team members. "More than that," Vega corrected. "We make them see us as something other than a threat or prey." She turned to Thorn. "The psychic amplifier the Orloth used, the Spire crystal you mentioned. Where is it located?" "Center of Mine Desert," Thorn replied. "Great tower. Very dangerous. Mind crushers guard always." "And this amplifier, it enhances their telepathic abilities." "Yes, makes mind touch reach far. Connects all mind crushers." Vega began unpacking components from her field kit, assembling them on the cave floor. "Reeves, the EMP device you rigged for the Marsh network, can you adapt it for a larger pulse?" The xenobiologist studied the components thoughtfully. "Possibly. But what are you thinking? An EMP won't stop psychic attacks." "Not directly," Vega agreed. "But if the Spire crystal works like most psychic technology, we've encountered it, has an electromagnetic component. Disrupt that, and we might be able to overload the entire network." "That's actually brilliant," Reeves admitted. "But we'd need to get within a few hundred meters of the amplifier for a field-rigged device to work." "Impossible." Thorn's gestures were emphatic. "Mind crushers sense approach. Kill from distance." "Not if they're distracted," Vega countered. "And not if we have help." She looked meaningfully at the still-bound Rax, who was beginning to regain consciousness. As dawn broke over Arcanus 9b, bringing with it the crimson light that seemed to bathe everything in blood, Vega finalized her desperate plan. The recovered survey team members, Daniels Park, and the others were still weak, but alert enough to understand their roles. Reeves had adapted their remaining equipment into a powerful but short-range EMP device, hardened by a weave of Arthax exoskeletal material provided by Thorn. "To be clear," Daniels said, her voice still raspy from the Dravari sedatives, "we're going to walk into the most psychically dangerous environment in the system, trigger a massive electromagnetic pulse, and hope it disrupts the Orloth enough for us to escape." "That's Phase 1, Vega confirmed. "Phase 2 is convincing the Deathworlder clans we're not the enemy they should be focused on." "And how exactly do we do that?" Vega nodded toward Rax, who sat sullenly against the cave wall. "By exposing a greater threat. The collective that our friend mentioned represents something new, a multi-species alliance targeting emerging powers like Earth. If the Deathworlder clans learn they're being manipulated as pawns in a larger game, they might redirect their aggression." Daniels finished understanding dawning. Classic enemy of my enemy strategy. With one addition, Vega added. We offer them something the collective doesn't respect as equals, rather than tools. As the team prepared to move out, Vega activated the hyperspace transponder, configuring it not for an emergency signal, but for a tight beam transmission directly to the Argus in orbit. Argus, actual, this is Commander Vega. Situation update and tactical request follows. The psychic desert of Arcanus 9b defied conventional physics. Sand dunes shifted without wind. Gravity seemed to vary from one step to the next. And most disturbingly, mirages formed that reflected not external reality, but the observer's own thoughts, twisted, amplified, and projected outward. Mental shields at maximum, Vega ordered, as they crested a ridge overlooking what appeared to be an enormous crystal spire rising from the desert floor. The Orloth will detect us soon if they haven't already. The spire itself was a marvel of nature, or perhaps design. Over 100 meters tall, it consisted of interlocking crystal segments that captured and refracted the morning light in hypnotic patterns. At its base, massive Orloth warriors stood in formation, their telepathic crests pulsing in synchronized rhythms. That's our target, Vega indicated the spire. Reeves, what's the minimum safe distance for the EMP? 200 meters, the xenobiologist replied. Any closer and we risk neurological damage from the psychic backlash. Vega handed the EMP device to Thorn. You'll place this. Your exoskeleton provides natural protection against electromagnetic fields, and the Orloth won't be expecting an Arthax. We'll try, Thorn agreed, though its mandibles clicked with obvious anxiety. The rest of us create a diversion, Vega continued. Daniels, you and Park approach from the east. Sandoval and I will come from the west. Reeves stays here with the trigger mechanism. Rax, who had been brought along under guard, spoke up for the first time since his capture. This is suicide. The Orloth will sense your intentions before you get within a kilometer. That's counting on direct approach, Vega agreed. But we're not going to hide our thoughts. We're going to broadcast them. She tapped her neural implant. Specifically, we're going to project everything we know about the collective and their adjudicator. Let the Orloth see who's really manipulating the situation. It was a desperate gambit, using the Orloth's own telepathic abilities against them, by deliberately allowing them to scan information the humans wanted them to have. If it failed, they would be mentally overwhelmed in seconds. Move out, Vega ordered. Calm silence from here. 60 minutes to extraction signal. The descent into the basin surrounding the crystal spire seemed to take both forever and no time at all, one of many perceptual distortions in the psychic desert. As they split into their assigned groups, Vega felt the first tentative probes against her mental shields, the Orloth, becoming aware of their presence. Instead of strengthening her defenses, she deliberately weakened them in specific areas, allowing carefully selected memories to leak through the adjudicator's words about manipulating the Deathworlder clans, Rax's betrayal, the collective's plans to use the three-clan alliance as a first step toward galactic control. The effect was immediate. The Orloth Guardians at the spire's base shifted position, their telepathic crests flaring with increased activity. Several of the massive creatures turned toward the desert, seemingly confused by the information they were receiving. Through her tactical binoculars, Vega saw Thorn making remarkable progress, using the Orloth's momentary distraction to approach the spire from a blind spot behind a dune. The young Arthax moved with surprising grace for an outcast, confirming Vega's suspicion that its failure had more to do with independent thinking than hunting capability. The psychic pressure intensified as Vega and Sandoval continued their approach. Images flashed through her mind, memories not her own, but deliberately projected by the Orloth. She saw massive herds of prey animals fleeing before Orloth hunting packs, rival predators frozen in telepathic paralysis as mind crushers closed in for the kill. The evolutionary history of a species that had dominated its world through mental supremacy rather than physical strength. "They're trying to intimidate us," Sandoval muttered. "Show us our place in the food chain." Stay focused, Vega replied, continuing to project her own chosen thoughts about the adjudicator and the collective. When they reached the designated position, Vega signaled Reeves with a handheld laser pointer, 3 quick flashes, indicating they were in place. Similar signals came from Daniel's position on the opposite side of the basin. Now, they needed Thorn to reach the Spire's base with the EMP device. The young Arthax was within 50 meters of the target when disaster struck. An Orloth guard turned suddenly, its 4 eyes fixing directly on Thorn's position. The massive creature's telepathic crest flared with alarm, and it emitted a roar that shook the very ground. Thorn froze, caught in the open with nowhere to hide. The EMP device clutched in its upper limbs seemed painfully obvious. Without hesitation, Vega stood from her concealed position and fired 3 pulse rounds into the air. "Here!" she shouted. "Over here!" The distraction worked perhaps too well. Every Orloth Guardian swiveled toward her position, their collective psychic focus hitting her like a physical blow. Vega staggered under the mental assault, her neural implant overloading with warning signals. Through watering eyes, she saw Thorn seize the opportunity, scuttling the final distance to the Spire's base and attaching the EMP device to a crystalline node. The young Arthax then retreated with remarkable speed, disappearing behind a dune, just as the Orloth began to advance on Vega's position. "Now, Reeves," Vega shouted into her comm. "Trigger it now." The EMP detonated with no visible explosion, but the effect was immediate and dramatic. The crystal spire's normal refraction patterns distorted violently, sending prismatic light in all directions. The Orloth Guardians froze mid-stride, their telepathic crests flickering like malfunctioning electronics. Several of the massive creatures collapsed, overwhelmed by the sudden disruption of their psychic network. More importantly, Vega felt the crushing pressure on her mind vanish. The Orloth's telepathic attack had been cut off at the source. "It worked!" Sandoval exclaimed. "Their network is down." "Temporarily," Vega cautioned, already moving toward their rendezvous point. "We have minutes at most before they recover." As they regrouped behind a large dune formation, Vega deployed their holographic projector, the final component of her plan. The device was standard survey equipment designed to create 3-dimensional maps of terrain. But it could be repurposed. Everyone's neural data loaded, she asked Reeves, who was making final adjustments to the projector. "All set," the xenobiologist confirmed. "But this illusion won't hold up under close inspection." "It doesn't need to," Vega replied. "It just needs to create enough confusion to get us out of here." The projector hummed to life, generating a massive holographic image, visible across the entire basin. The apparent arrival of an Earth battlecruiser complete with weapons ports and landing craft. The image was constructed from the combined memory engrams of the military veterans in the survey team, creating a composite that matched actual Earth military protocols. "Phase 1 complete," Vega announced as they began their retreat toward the extraction point. "Now for Phase 2. At her signal, Daniels released their prisoner. Rax looked momentarily confused by his sudden freedom, then suspicious. "What's the catch?" he demanded. "No catch," Vega replied. "Take this." She handed him a data crystal containing everything they'd learned about the 3-clan alliance and the collective's manipulation. "Make sure your employers get the full picture. We're not the threat they should be worried about." Rax accepted the crystal warily. "Why would you trust me with this?" "Because you're a survivor," Vega answered simply. "And you'll want to be on the winning side when the real conflict begins." With that, they left him standing at the edge of the psychic desert, the crystal's weight only partially metaphorical in his palm. The extraction point was a high plateau, overlooking all 3 biomes of Arcanus 9b. As the survey team climbed toward it, they could see the aftermath of their intervention rippling across the Deathworld. In the volcanic fields, Arthax hunting parties moved with new purpose, no longer searching for humans, but converging on the crashed vessel of the Vaxxan adjudicator. In the marshlands, Dravari emerged in unprecedented numbers, their bioluminescent communications, forming patterns of unmistakable agitation. And from the psychic desert behind them, the recovered Orloth warriors marched not in pursuit of the humans, but toward the borders of the other territories. "The alliance is completely fractured," Reeves observed. "They're returning to their traditional rivalries." "With a new common enemy," Vega added. "The collective has miscalculated badly." When they reached the plateau summit, Vega activated their emergency transponder at full power. The device's hyperspace signal would be detectable across the entire system, not just by Earth forces, but by anyone monitoring the frequencies. Thorn, who had been unusually quiet since the Spire incident, finally spoke through its translator. "What happens now?" "Now we wait," Vega replied, settling beside the young Arthax. "And while we wait, I keep my promise to you. Asylum in Earth territory." "And others who see differently?" Vega considered the question carefully. "If there are more like you among the Deathworlder clans, those who see cooperation as strength rather than weakness, then perhaps something new can emerge from this conflict." The sky above Arcanus 9b darkened as a familiar shape descended through the atmosphere. Not the Earth combat vessel they'd projected as hologram, but the Argus itself, responding to Vega's earlier tight beam transmission, requesting immediate extraction despite the risks. "Commander," Daniels said quietly, "what we did here, exposing the collective, disrupting the alliance, it won't end with this planet, will it?" "No," Vega admitted. "We've stepped into something much bigger than a planetary survey. The collective represents a philosophy directly opposed to Earth's approach to galactic participation. Where we see potential in diversity and cooperation, they see only the natural order of predator and prey." As the Argus settled onto the plateau, in a swirl of dust and engine exhaust, Vega helped her injured team members toward the loading ramp. Thorn followed hesitantly, clearly uncertain of its reception aboard a human vessel. "It's all right," Vega assured the young Arthax. "This is the first step toward something new." 3 months later, Commander Selene Vega stood before the Galactic Assembly's central chamber, the curved walls rising around her, like the interior of a massive nautilus shell. Representatives from over 200 spacefaring species occupied the tiered seating, their attention focused on the human officer and her unusual companion. Thorn had adapted remarkably well to life among humans. Its broken mandible had been repaired with Earth medical technology, and it wore a translator device that rendered its clicking speech into multiple languages simultaneously. More striking was its position no longer an outcast, but an official envoy from a splinter faction of the Arthax that sought dialogue with humanity. The events on Arcanus 9b represent both a warning and an opportunity. Vega addressed the assembly. The alliance of Deathworlder clans was unprecedented predators, who evolved to compete, suddenly cooperating against a perceived common threat. But the manipulation behind that alliance reveals a deeper concern. On the chamber's main display, images appeared of the Vaccine Adjudicator and intercepted communications from the mysterious collective. Earth intelligence had been working overtime since the incident, piecing together a picture of an organization that spanned dozens of species united by a fundamental philosophy that the natural order of evolution, strong consuming weak predator, dominating prey, should be preserved in galactic politics. "Humanity rejects this vision," Vega continued. "We evolved on our own Deathworld Earth, where adaptability proved more valuable than specialized hunting prowess. We survived not by becoming the ultimate predator, but by cooperating, by lifting each other up, by solving problems collectively." A murmur ran through the assembly at this characterization of Earth. Most spacefaring species had considered it a moderate challenge world at best, not understanding that human adaptability itself was an evolutionary response to constantly changing threats. The Arthax, Dravari, and Orloth clans have issued a formal request to open diplomatic channels with Earth, Vega announced, causing another surge of surprised commentary. "Not as predator and prey, but as equals with different strengths. This represents the first interspecies alliance born of respect rather than fear or necessity. Thorn stepped forward, its mandibles clicking in the formal speech pattern of Arthax diplomacy. The Chamber's translation system rendered its words, "The Queens believed humans were prey that became predators." This was wrong. Humans were never prey or predator. They are adapters. They change themselves and their environment, rather than waiting for evolution. This is power the Hunt Queens never understood. The session continued for hours, with representatives from dozens of worlds weighing in on the implications of the Arcana's incident and the revelation of the collective's existence. By the time Vega and Thorn departed the Chamber, preliminary frameworks for new security protocols and information-sharing agreements had been established. "They're taking the threat seriously," Vega observed as they walked the luminous corridors of the assembly station. "As they should," Thorn signaled. "Collective philosophy appeals to many. Safety in natural order, predictability in dominance hierarchies. While cooperation seems chaotic and unpredictable," Vega agreed, "it's a seductive viewpoint for species that evolved as apex predators." They reached the docking bay where a new vessel awaited, sleeker and more heavily armed than the survey ship Argus. The name emblazoned on its hull, Hunt Breaker. "Your new command," came a voice behind them. Admiral Chen approached his formal Earth Navy uniform, contrasting with the more practical field gear Vega preferred. "A multi-species deep reconnaissance unit, tasked with identifying and countering collective influence on the frontier." Vega accepted the command codes with mixed emotions. She'd expected to return to standard survey duty after the Arcani's mission. "So I'm hunting hunters now." "More than that," the Admiral corrected. "You're building something new. Your crew will include representatives from all 3 Deathworlder clans, along with Earth's best xenobiologists and tactical specialists." "First of its kind," Thorn observed. "Many watch to see if it fails or succeeds." "Many are betting on failure," the Admiral acknowledged. "Evolutionary instincts run deep. But evolution isn't just about tooth and claw. It's about finding new ways to thrive in changing environments." As they boarded the Hunt Breaker, Vega paused at a viewport overlooking the assembly station's docking ring. Among the various vessels representing member worlds, 3 ships stood out: the insectoid architecture of an Arthax hive vessel, the organic curves of a Dravari toxin carrier, and the massive mental amplifiers of an Orloth dreadnought. Traditional rivals, now cautiously aligned against a philosophical threat that challenged them all. "It won't be easy," she said to Thorn as they continued toward the bridge. "Cooperation rarely is." "But necessary," the young Arthax replied. "Galaxy changing. New predators emerge. Not with claws or toxins or mind powers, but with ideologies," Vega finished. "The collective won't stop with one failed attempt." As the Hunt Breaker disengaged from the station and prepared for hyperspace jump, Vega studied the preliminary mission briefing. Reports of unusual activity in the Cygnus Reach. Possible collective recruitment among the silicon-based intelligences there. A complex situation requiring both military precision and diplomatic finesse. Set course for the Cygnus Reach. She ordered her new pilot, a former Dravari toxin smith, whose translucent skin revealed fascinating patterns of thought in neural luminescent pulses. Maximum stealth protocols. As the stars stretched into hyperspace lines outside the viewports, Vega reflected on how quickly the galaxy was changing. 3 months ago, the Deathworlder clans had been united in seeing humans as either prey or competitors. Now, representatives of those same species served alongside humans on her bridge. Not because humans had defeated them in battle or dominated them through superior firepower, but because adaptation, true adaptation, meant recognizing when cooperation offered greater benefits than competition. The collective believed in the immutable laws of nature, predator, and prey, strong and weak domination as the natural order. But humanity's greatest strength had always been refusing to accept limitations, including the limitations of natural law. On the bridge of the Hunt Breaker, species that evolved to kill each other worked side by side, united by a vision of the galaxy where diversity of approach created strength rather than weakness. It was, Vega thought, perhaps the ultimate adaptation, and one the collective had never anticipated. Thorne joined her at the command station, its repaired mandible clicking thoughtfully. "New hunt begins," it observed. "But not for prey." "No," Vega agreed. "For a future where apex predator becomes a relic of evolutionary history, not a philosophy to live by." As the hunt breaker accelerated toward its destination, a proximity alert sounded. The sensor officer, a junior Orloth, whose telepathic crest had been modified to interface directly with the ship's systems, reported unusual activity near a wormhole they were passing. Unknown energy signature," the officer transmitted through the ship's telepathic interface, "similar to readings recorded during the Spire overload on Arcanus 9B. Vega ordered the ship to a safe distance, watching as the wormhole's normally stable aperture fluctuated with patterns of energy that matched no known phenomenon. Something had been disturbed by their actions on the Deathworld, something that perhaps transcended the conventional understanding of predator and prey entirely. "Log the coordinates," she ordered, "and flag for follow-up investigation. Whatever waited beyond that wormhole would be a challenge for another day." For now, the Hunt Breaker had its mission to find and counter the collective's influence, to forge new alliances where only rivalry had existed before, and to demonstrate that humanity's vision of cooperation could outcompete even the most perfect evolutionary killing machines. The Deathworlders had thought themselves apex predators until Earthlings arrived and showed them a different kind of strength altogether.